and we're going.
So, yeah, we got the Panthers at the Saints, and boy, this was a brutal game for the Carolina Panthers. But the New Orleans Saints, Derek Carr, he was certainly able to come out here and get things going with his offense at home against an NFC South rival who is really in a struggling state as a franchise right now. Bryce Young, a lot of question marks surrounding him and whether or not he may or may not be the long-term guy. Yeah, but yes, this is only one game, and it is only his second season too. In his defense, but still nonetheless, a lot of question marks there. Obviously, the first game for head coach Dave Canales. A lot of learning moments here about his team, a lot of learning moments here just within themselves as a whole. So this is going to be really tough going forward because now you got to claw your way out of what you can get. And I mean, it is worth noting that I was also impressed with the showings of Xavier Legette and Deontay Johnson. Adam Thielen also got involved as well. Also worth noting that, Shaq Thompson and Xavier Woods also. There were some moments. Listen, there were some moments for the Panthers in this game. But ultimately, this was a dominant showing by the New Orleans Saints and showing what they could really do, though I was really surprised that Chris Olave, personally for me, didn't get involved more in this game because I did have him on my fantasy team. But still, nonetheless, I was very, very impressed with the Saints in this football game. Alvin Kamara definitely went out there and did what he could do. And it's also certainly worth noting that, Rashid Shaheed and just a lot of playmakers as well. Just like Rashid Shaheed really showed out. Foster Moreau. I'm just watching this game and, the Panthers offensive line, I would say that's probably the biggest thing is the offensive line. The Jets offensive line, the Giants offensive line had better showings than the Panthers O-line in this football game. Andy Dalton, I guess, came in for a play, interestingly enough. So, just all in all, when I'm looking at this Saints-Panthers football game, it's more so speaking about the Panthers, talking about their side of things on this, just that where they're at in a state of franchise, you bring in Dave Canales, the first year head coach here in this system, and he's going to have a lot of work to do. Can you coach up Bryce Young? Can you develop him? Can you bring this team together around guys like Adam Thielen, perhaps? So it's just going to be a tough season for them, really, and a lot of learning moments, and they're going to have to just simply keep grinding as a franchise and try to figure this thing out. As far as the Saints, they're a possible NFC South contender. I kind of wasn't too impressed by the Falcons and what they showed, but obviously they're going to definitely have to contend with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which I do firmly believe is the favorites to win the NFC South with Baker Mayfield at the helm there. But the Saints are certainly a potential contender for that. And they're a team that has got dynamic weapons like Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, Chris Olave when he is involved, Jawan Johnson. And on the defensive side of the football, it's also worth noting, Alontae Taylor is, definitely a very solid playmaker for them as well. The cornerback out of Tennessee. And he's definitely one of the prolific leaders on that defense. So I think, especially in the secondary, their front seven might need a little bit of work, but definitely in their secondary, they got some solid pieces there. This is a football team that can really go. They're a team where, to me, it's like they can take themselves as far as they want to, but they got to want to do it. And the Panthers, well, Like, what's your take on the Panthers?
Yeah, I mean, the Carolina Panthers, they're clearly a team that is still in a rebuilding phase. You mentioned the first year head coach, Dave Canales. He's doing what he can to build a quality culture and to do what he can to build a team that is one day going to be a competitive football team. But I mean, it's fair to take away from this game that it was a disappointing start. I mean, I don't think any of us would have expected the Carolina Panthers to win this game. I mean, they were significant underdogs, but you would at least want to see a more competitive effort, see some more potential out of Bryce Young, who had a disappointing game. Um, Definitely not what they were hoping for to start the season, but as you said, they can just control what they can control. The offensive line, it is what it is. It's not a particularly strong unit, and they're doing what they can to improve. I mean, they added Deontay Johnson in the offseason. He didn't have the biggest opening game, 2 catches for 19 yards. You draft Xavier Legette, your receiver, 4 catches for 35 yards in his NFL debut, a fairly respectable performance given the circumstances. So, yeah, a lot of issues in Carolina and a lot of things you want to figure out, but overall, just a disappointing game. And there's a lot of things they can do to try to turn things around, at the very least, be more competitive. And that's a tough start to the season, especially considering the loss of Derek Brown, their star defensive lineman, who's was put on injury reserve ending his season. So that's also a very disappointing way for them to start the season in that respect. I mean, he was one of the premier players on the defense, a 2020 first round draft pick. So just a tough all around start for the Carolina Panthers as they try to continue their rebuild.
Certainly a tough road indeed. I believe that it's definitely going to take a lot of time going forward, and just a matter of whether or not they can really get this thing going, if they ever get this thing going, because it's just hard to see that right now.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely hard to see. I mean, one day they're hoping that they can turn it around and turn this into a good football team, but there's a lot of decisions they need to make. They need to analyze where they are as a football team, what their roster has. What do you have in Bryce Young? I mean, you want to believe in a guy like Bryce Young that's out there competing in questionable circumstances considering the team around him, but at some point you're going to need to see something out of Bryce Young.
Like himself, yes. I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. So it's just, and like, so what's your take on the Saints, the New Orleans
Yeah.
Saints going forward?
Looking at the Saints, I mean, they showed up, they played a professional game of football. Derek Carr, very efficient. He didn't have to do a whole lot. 19 of 23, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. Yeah, it came out, played really well. They blocked for him, no sacks. Well, 1 sack, I should say. Alvin Kamara, respectable. Rashid Shaheed, a speedster. They really mixed it up a lot on offense, got a lot of different guys involved. Um, and then if you look at their defense, I mean, they just made life very difficult for Bryce Young in the offense. 4 sacks, 2 interceptions. I mean, it was just a dominant game all around for the Saints. Alontae Taylor was everywhere with his 6 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits. I mean, just a really impressive performance for the Saints all around. I mean, they did everything they could. They made all their field goals. So just a professional game of football.
What's your take on like Chris Olave not getting involved? And Chris Olave didn't really get heavily involved, yet they put up 47 points. What's your take on that?
It just shows that they have a plethora of options that they can go to on offense. They can get the ball to a speedster like Shaheed, and obviously Kamara, he's an option both in the run game and in the pass game. Nice to see Foster Moreau getting touches. I know he's dealt with a lot of health related issues. He was the one that was diagnosed with cancer, and now he's come back from that. So that's a beautiful story. But yeah, Chris Olave, he's still their number one receiver. He's gonna continue to be involved this game. They didn't need him very much. I mean, he's a guy that he's gonna get his targets. This is gonna be just one game where he only had the 2 catches, but that's something that'll change. He'll get targeted in more competitive football games.
Absolutely. An interesting game between the Panthers and the Saints. Saints win this one 47-10. Coming up next week, the Carolina Panthers played the Los Angeles Chargers, who came off the win, and the Saints on the road at the Dallas Cowboys.
That certainly could be an interesting football game. 2 teams that got off to the season with dominant wins, and I mean, that is one we could look forward to.
Be sure to hit subscribe. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for listening to The Gridiron Glory.